Hey everybody, this is Andrew here with the Tower e-bike repair shop, and today we're going to be going over some tips for shopping for an e-bike. Now, probably are shopping for an e-bike because you're checking out this video. I'm sure you have seen that there are hundreds and hundreds of different brands and probably twice as many bikes. Every brand feels like they have 10 different bicycles, and they all have different styles and different electrical components, and you may feel that it's overwhelming. You may feel bogged down with all this crazy information. Well, we are here to help you zone in on some things you should keep an eye out for that can help indicate, a nice quality on an e-bike. So I got two e-bikes here, just kind of as some examples. I've got a Rad Runner by Rad Power Bikes, which I'm sure you are well familiar with. And then of course we have our own Tower Beach Bum V2 here. Probably the number one thing that I always look out for when it comes to e-bikes, and it's a very simple thing that I found a lot of companies, even some of the big ones, will tend to cheap out on, and that is the brakes. Coming from the pure cycling background, stopping power is always very important for me, especially when it comes to e-bikes. E-bikes are heavy, they travel very fast, so I want to be able to ensure that I can stop my e-bike reliably every time. And one of the things you should look out for is disc brakes. Now you might see a bike has a disc brake and you're like, oh yes, this is a way big upgrade over those traditional rim brakes my old 26 bike had. Well, not all disc brakes are the same. While disc brakes are way better than a rim brake, there is some differences between different disc brakes. So one of the big things a lot of companies will cheap out on is they'll put mechanical disc brakes on their bikes versus hydraulic disc brakes. Now, what's the difference between those two? With a mechanical disc brake, when you squeeze this lever, you're literally pulling a cable that's actuating a piston and pushing a brake pad into a rotor into another brake pad. Now, because of that, because you are literally pulling that cable, all of your brake power is reliant on your hand strength, which is fine if you're starting out the ride, but if you're riding for a long time and you've got some long breaks, towards the end of the ride, your hands might be very tired and you may not be getting the same braking power. In addition to that, mechanical disc brakes also require a lot of adjustments throughout the period of their life. Because again, how it works is it pushes one piston into the rotor and pushes it into another brake pad that's in a fixed position. Now, because of this, because they're not pushing at equal rates, you are constantly going to have to readjust the caliper, adjust the inner brake pad, and adjust the cable tension. All of those things combined make for a less pleasurable experience. When you compare that to something like on our Tower Beach Bum, we have hydraulic disc brakes. Now, hydraulic disc brakes are something that's kind of come from, like the motorcycle world. They were first originally adapted for mountain biking, in all sorts of conditions, you would get reliable stopping power. Now, with the hydraulic, why it's really nice is the pistons come out at equal rates from either side. So one, you get even brake pad wear, so they don't have to be adjusted nearly as much as the mechanical brakes. But the other great feature is the brake lever does all of the work for you. It is not reliant on your hand strength, much like the mechanical. Why that's nice is if you've been riding for a long, long time and you've had a lot of brakes, when you squeeze these brakes, it doesn't matter how tired your hands are. You are still going to get the same reliable braking power every time. So that is, in my opinion, the number one thing to look out for is the braking. I would always go with a hydraulic brake. Now, there are a lot of good bikes that do have mechanical brakes on there, but do know it is a spot that the brand is cheaping out on. So you might see a bike like, oh man, this 1,000-watt bike is super cool and it's cheaper than any other bike. That's because more than likely they skipped out on some essential parts like that. Now, what are some other parts that brands may cheap out on? Some of them are as small as quality of life things like seats. Seats are probably one of the biggest ones. You can see here, we've got a nice Velo seat here, nice, big, and comfortable. And then this seat here on the Rad Runner is another great example of a spot that significantly cheaped out on. Now, I've been in the bike shop industry for 10 plus years, and this seat and seat post combination here on this Rad Runner is by far the worst seat I have ever seen in my time in the bike shop industry. This seat is terrible, it's uncomfortable, and the worst part about it, what makes it different from other bikes, is this seat post is fixed to this seat. So even if you wanted to switch to another seat, you can't. You would have to buy a whole new seat post and seat. So that is another thing to look out for. So like this Rad Runner is a great example. This bike sells for pretty good value. You might be looking at it like, oh man, I can get this great rad bike from a great company for a great price. But just know, to keep that price that low, there are going to be spots that are going to be cheaped out on. A lot of big brands like Rad and Juice, the electrical components on there are going to be really solid. That's what they spend a lot of their money on. and as a result, their bikes ride really well. But to keep that price point low like they like to advertise, they do cheap out on spots. Like almost all of Rad's bikes will have mechanical disc brakes. So that is a key thing to look out for. Another big thing to look out for is just kind of quality of life stuff. You know, small things like pedals, grips. You know, you want to make sure it's got some decent quality stuff on it. Because again, all that stuff can be swapped further down the line, but that is any savings that you got on the other end, you're going to end up spending on other things to get the bike just the way you want it. So you got to think of the things that are really going to impact you on a day-to-day basis. A lot of people will focus in on, oh, what are the watts of this bike? What's the battery capacity of this bike? Well, those things are important. It's not the whole picture of the e-bike. Because again, at its core, these are bicycles. They have bicycle components on them, and if those bicycle components are cheap and not good, it doesn't matter what electrical system you put on here, it's not gonna run well. Which does bring me to another point, and that is another thing to look out for is the wattage on bikes. Now, this is sort of an interesting area in the e-bike industry. Now, a lot of brands will put the bill like, yes, our motor is absolutely 750 watts. When in actuality, it can peak at 750 watts. Realistically, it's mostly sustained at 500 watts. So that is something you need to be careful of. Like our Beach Bum V2 here, we have a 500 watt motor on here. Now, it can peak at 750, but again, it's sustained 500 watts, so we put it is a 500 watt battery. Now, there are certain brands out there that will put that differentiation. Like I know Aventon will actually list it. They will put, you know, yeah, our bike can peak at 750 watts, but you're gonna get more than likely 500 watts sustained. So when you're looking at it, of course, brands will be like, yeah, our bike's 750 watts. This thing's the most powerful e-bikes in the market. Now look at those, but take them with a grain of salt. You know, they may not be a true 750 watt or, you know, sky's the limit. Wattage is not everything when it comes to a bicycle. Other things to look out for as well that cheap out are the cells that companies use. You know, you'll look at a battery and you'll be like, oh man, that's got a great big battery. It's got all these amp hours, but not all cells are made the same. There are some pretty low tier cells, and then there's some high quality cells made from brands Samsung, LG, Panasonic. You want to make sure that the cells that are going into your battery are good, high quality cells that are going to last a long time. E-bike batteries are very expensive. The last thing you want to do is spend a bunch of money on an e-bike to find out it has cheap cells in it that died off, and now you have to spend $300 to $600 on a brand new battery for it. So that's another thing to keep out for is the batteries. Like on our tower batteries, we've got high quality Samsung cells in there. So good quality stuff. For the other stuff, more quality of life is finding a bike that fits your specific riding purpose. Obviously, there are bunches of e-bikes on the market, but not all of them are the same. The same way that a mountain bike and a road bike and a beach cruiser are all different, it's the same thing with e-bikes. These two bikes here, very different bikes. This one's kind of a fat tire one that you can cruise over the sand and dirt and stuff, where this is more of a, you know, along the boardwalk kind of cruiser. It's the same thing with mountain bikes and road bikes and hybrid bikes. You want to find a bike that fits what you are looking for the best. You know, if you're just looking to cruise around town, getting any mountain bike might not be the best for you. You're going to spend a bunch of money, extra money on features that make it great for riding off-road, but not as nice for riding in the street. Or on the tail end of that, you know, if you're trying to get a bike that can ride absolutely anywhere, getting a beach cruiser or some city hybrid style bike may not be the best for you. So while you're searching, really do some, you know, internal thinking, be like, what do I want to get out of this bike? I see it all the time. I get people trying, you know, spending bunches of money trying to convert a bike that's really not styled for what they want to do, and they try to spend a bunch of money styling to do what they want to do. When if you just get one at the beginning that fits you perfectly, you're going to be good. One other spot, it's not as critical, but it's something that's big to me, and that's the display on e-bikes. A lot of e-bikes have a lot of different displays. I like at least a full LCD display. I like having a little screen. Some brands will kind of cheap out and put kind of little lights, or some bikes will even put nothing. Like this Rad Runner here, it just has little LED lights along it, and it doesn't have any sort of display. Some e-bikes will even have full-on color displays that you can adjust the brightness. So that's one thing that I personally look out for on e-bikes. It may be important to you, it may not be important to you, but it is definitely something that I would look out for. At the end of the day, there's a lot of different specs to look out for on e-bikes, a lot of different styles of bikes. Just look out for what you're truly looking for in an e-bike. Make sure you're choosing a brand that gives you nice bang for your buck as far as components. And as long as you're finding a bike that's perfect for you, you're gonna have a great time. So thanks for joining us. Hope you have a great day.